any one pillar. And part of the criticism around this approach has been that, that the policy projection in this manner sort of makes Kenya's approach very, very rigid. There's little view of the interaction between different pillars, and therefore one doesn't get the full view of how we drive our policy. But nevertheless, Your Excellency, this policy framework has served us since independence, because we have been leaders in the peace frontier, and increasingly from 2002, we have been running on an economic diplomacy trajectory, as well as environmental trajectory, diaspora, as well as cultural diplomacy. Next slide, please. The next slide essentially captures, and I think it's a bit repetitive because we've discussed this, because in reviewing the foreign policy, I think we asked ourselves, what are the determinants, what are the drivers of this review process? And like I mentioned earlier, we looked at the external the domestic environment, the external environment, our national ambitions captured in the bottom-up economic transformation agenda and Vision 2030. And we also looked, Your Excellency, at the demands from the bottom, from non-state actors and other institutions, all of which collectively influence the strategic direction of our diplomatic efforts. But more fundamentally, like I mentioned, since 2014, many global shifts have been witnessed and continue to shape foreign policies world over, including Kenya. Most fundamentally, Your Excellency, I think you recall in 2020 with COVID, the world suddenly turned its attention on the impact of health and the dangers that public health can pose on peace and security. And therefore, the nexus between global health and peace began to be examined. The other important factor in that regard, Your Excellency, is technology, the ubiquity of technology, and the fact that technology has now horizontalized access to information. The information available to government is more or less the information that is available to the citizen. And that has democratized the information space, but it has also created considerable challenges. Your Excellency, we have emerging areas of diplomacy, including parliamentary. Like I mentioned, Parliament is playing a very important role. The judiciary also, in the judicial interpretation of the law, is developing areas of diplomacy. The ocean is becoming a very important site for diplomacy. We have done a lot of conference-related diplomacy and public diplomacy. Your Excellency, we have, like I said, received views from all those actors, and we continue to evaluate and adapt our foreign policy for relevance and effectiveness. Next slide, please. So, Your Excellency, this is sort of the way we envision the new focus areas of our foreign policy. So away from the house of diplomacy, the house of foreign policy that we had in 2014, I don't know what this chart sort of triggers in our minds. To me, I see a leopard skin in the variegated colors that you see. Is that to say that because the world has become even more complex and more unpredictable, we will be more adaptive, more agile, maybe even a little more camouflaged in order to deal with the habitats that is a world that is a lot more complex? Or is it like some people have said, that this now looks like a plane that is about to take off, with global sustainability as the cockpit and the whole of government as the tail, and the two ends of bilateralism and multilateralism being sort of the wings that will enable this our diplomacy to take off even much more strongly into the future. But again, Your Excellency, these are the focus areas of our diplomacy. The idea really being that we have tried to capture the non-linearity of the environment. We have also sought to capture the interactions between, for example, the diaspora and our socio-cultural diplomacy. The role that our diaspora could play in global governance and in multilateralism. But all of it, Your Excellency, is still anchored on the idea of driving the national interest. The hypothesis of this foreign policy is to argue that all these factors play a dynamic and interactive role in the furtherance of our foreign policy, resting on the idea that it will be driven by the whole of government, tapping and taking advantage of both our bilateral relations, which is mainly driven by our missions abroad and the missions that we host here, as well as the institutions of multilateralism that exist. Next slide, please. What we have in the next slides, Your Excellency, are really a breakdown of each of those areas, and I will not really take so much time in them. It is obvious, Your Excellency, that Kenya is a champion on peace and security. And this particular focus area aims to safeguard Kenya's sovereignty and territorial integrity, preserve democracy and fundamental human rights, and ensure the prosperity and well-being of our people. Your Excellency, the bottom-up economic transformation focuses heavily on the need to expand our economy and the opportunities available to our people, and that is why we have economic and commercial diplomacy, which seeks to achieve robust economic and commercial engagements in order to secure Kenya's socio-economic development and prosperity with the broad aim of becoming an upper middle income and industrialized nation. Your Excellency, you're trade and commercial engagements globally. In this area, Your Excellency, of economic and commercial diplomacy, we have done to address emerging challenges and safeguard national interest. Kenya will continue to advocate for a more representative, fairer, and equitable international system that incorporates, reflects, and amplifies the voices of the global South. Your Excellency, we will continue to work on the promotion of consensus building, respect for international law, and a rule-based international order. Next slide, please. On environmental and climate change diplomacy, Your Excellency, Kenya is a champion when it comes to matters climate change, because our energy security, Your Excellency, is predicated on green energy by and large. And when it comes to the environment, Your Excellency, Kenya is at the heart of environmental diplomacy by way of hosting UNEP and UN Habitat. And so the aim here is to promote global environmental sustainability through the preservation of natural resources, effective international collaboration, robust policy frameworks, and innovative strategies that support climate adaptation, biodiversity protection, and sustainable development. And we will seek to showcase our credentials as a global leader on environmental and climate change issues and renewable energy. On science and tech and innovation, Your Excellency, the aim here is to integrate various forms of STI to build a robust ecosystem to achieve Kenya's national interests and position the country as a key player in global technological discourse. Your Excellency, we will promote partnerships to support cutting-edge technologies, including AI, to create jobs, spur economic growth, and improve the welfare and living standards of Kenyans. We shall leverage on Kenya's commitment to international collaborations and partnerships aimed at attracting critical investments and fostering the exchange of knowledge for addressing global challenges. Pillars are diaspora diplomacy, which my sister has spoken to quite a great deal, hinged on a conceptual framework that protects, engages, and empowers the Kenyan diaspora community to enhance their prosperity and that of the nation, and to leverage on diaspora to promote Kenya's interests abroad, including employment in strategic positions in regional and international organizations. On social-cultural diplomacy, the aim of which is to harness social-cultural opportunities in the international arena, especially through the promotion of social values, cultural heritage, and endowments as tools to build relationships, foster understanding, and influence other nations. The cultural heritage, sports, education, and global health diplomacy. In relation to the implementation and the monitoring and evaluation of this policy, Your Excellency, this is predicated on an efficient and professional foreign service, working in collaboration with other MDAs through a whole of government and society approach, both at the national and county governments. A monitoring and evaluation policy will be guided by the National Monitoring and Evaluation Framework. Your Excellency, other documents have been prepared to bolster this draft policy. A cabinet memo will come before you. And to implement the policy much more coherently, Your Excellency, it is proposed, and I know the Prime Cabinet Secretary will speak to this, that a sessional paper on Kenya by which we will engage Kenyans on the new Kenya's foreign policy. Your Excellency, that is in a nutshell the draft foreign policy that we seek to present to you. And now, without further ado, allow me to invite to the stage His Excellency, the Prime Cabinet Secretary, to take it over from there. Let's put our hands together for the Prime Cabinet Secretary. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, Your Excellency, the Deputy President, the Honorable KICC, my colleagues in government, fellow Kenyans and participants in this very business-like and short but critical consultation. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Your Excellency, I can only say that the PS has done a very good job in running us through the outline of the emerging or evolving foreign policy. But why we thought that it's so important is because we want to be able to domesticate foreign policy. In the middle of this year, when the young men and women of Kenya were raising some concerns, they kept on asking this question: why does the president travel? Not looking at the end result, but why does he travel? It even migrated from why to the mode of travel. And in the process, critical aspects of what emerges out of proper engagement at the highest level was being lost in that conversation. So it is our desire that through this kind of interaction, under your leadership, Your Excellency, we can perhaps foreign policy machinani, so that we can get the ordinary citizen, the young men and women of this country, to understand the globe. Try and imagine yourself living in a country with a dormant foreign policy. A nation that is like an introvert, does not interact with anybody, does not talk to anybody. What kind of nation would that be? So, as we look at what has happened, the reality is that the President of Kenya, in the 2.5 years or so since he took over, have dramatically reprofiled Kenya's image